Good morning. Okay, because as I go along, I'm going to be asking you some questions. And I want to know that we've got folks here today who are ready to go along with me for my ride. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I'm really glad to see so much growth and development in this Twin Cities area since my last time here, which was about 10 years ago. So it's really, it's nice to see that things are moving along here and that there is some level of comfort in the way that you are accepting others into this community. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. It is the settlement of the various ethnic groups and tourism opportunities in the Twin Cities that precipitates the idea of this kind of conference. And clearly, based on the response I see here today, it's something that piques your interest or your curiosity. And you are looking at the potential of ethnic tourism becoming an economic driver for this area. I think it's important to be clear on terminology as we delve into this subject. We know that tourism is travel for leisure purposes. Travel for leisure purposes. Something defined as an action that grew out of one's ability to, one, find time to travel, two, one who found disposable income so that travel could take place, and one who had access to transportation and was able to take advantage of the opportunity that grows out of new technologies. Philip Zai, in his book on authenticating ethnic tourism, reminds us that what distinguishes mass tourism from cultural tourism is that one focuses primarily on fun and entertainment, the other brings cultural experiences into a visitor context. Generally, cultural tourism meant people who traveled to participate in the high arts being classical performances like ballet and opera, or first-run plays, or highly regarded visual arts shows like Dolly and the like. He goes on to explain that ethnic cultural tourism, also known as multicultural tourism, brings a variety of elements into the discussion. In some countries, ethnic cultural tourism can mean something suggesting majority or first world travelers looking for authentic, sometimes exotic experiences found only in countries populated by third world or indigenous peoples. Okay. We're all pretty evolved in this room. What this means is that back in the day, ethnic cultural tourism meant that people from the West, or white people, on the international front, traveled to exotic places to experience people in their natural habitats. Okay? That's really what that was about then. It's evolved since then, and what I want to do is move it from that global context to how we particularly look at ethnic cultural tourism here in the United States. Is that okay? All right. So, I want to look at two defined aspects of ethnic cultural tourism. The first is one that focuses on products or experiences that are authentic by way of providing true music, artifacts, arts and crafts, foods, monuments, and architecture, and other things that are related to customs or practices associated with a particular ethnic group. And two, where a district, trail, or corridor is formed, highlighting commercial activity staffed by or owned by people of a particular ethnic group, generally noted for restaurants and eateries, live cultural performances, clothing and gift shops, and other types of commercial enterprises. And the deputy mayor was right on point with sharing some of what's been going on in this community. It was early in the 90s that a study was conducted by the U.S. Travel and Tourism Administration they actually did something that we have regarded as a landmark study. The then Deputy Secretary for that agency, a woman by the name of Leslie Doggett, spearheaded an important study that looked at the growing interest of cultural heritage tourism associated with African Americans and people of African descent, Hispanics representing numerous countries of origin, Asians representing various countries of origin, and Native Americans representing various nations of origin, to undertake this study and subsequently endorse some of the destinations that they studied around the country. It highlighted initiatives primarily looking at communities that offered unique cultural experiences, historical experiences, or had natural resources with the ability to create jobs, generate income from the tourism and travel industry. This was tremendous. First of all, we're talking about minority communities. We're talking about minority people in this country. And for the first time, this federal government said, wow, that's something of interest to people. We think we can do something with that and encourage people want to travel within the domestic U.S. and also attract international visitors. And so it didn't stop there. It also, for the first time on a national level, acknowledged the economic impact of minorities who travel. Because I guess they didn't think we traveled before. I don't know. At that time, it was estimated, and I think it was understated, quite frankly, at that time it was estimated at about $20 million in economic impact. Of course, now it's over $100 million. And I don't know where we are in this 2011, but back in 2009, the economic impact of people of color who travel in this country was over $100 million. And we were acknowledged finally for having this disposable income. Keep in mind, these are groups who have been traveling for decades, some for centuries, visiting both domestic and international destinations. But in 1991, this landmark study acknowledged all of this. Two other important details that this study noted was that ethnic tourism enhanced community pride and strengthened community cultural values. Philadelphia, which is where I come from, was one of the noted models for this study, and I'm going to talk more about what happened in Philadelphia a little bit later in my conversation with you. But Philadelphia was noted because of its numerous, African American attractions, minority-owned businesses in hospitality, and the appropriate infrastructure. Growing interest in the cultural heritage of minority ethnic groups has spurred a look at the economic development opportunities associated with economic cultural tourism in the United States. What has become important to the discussion of ethnic cultural tourism is that Americans seem to have a growing interest in things that are authentic and meaningful. So they want authentic and meaningful experiences more and more. And as a byproduct of both, we have the opportunity to provide visitors with cross-cultural encounters through the promotion of ethnic cultural tourism, something that can only enhance one's appreciation for and understanding of minority cultures. As the E. Cohen article stated in the Journal of Sustainable Tourism, these experiences can result in changed attitudes and behaviors that can lead to a more just and equitable relationship between minority and majority peoples. Very interesting. This is not what we look for as tourism professionals. We just look to sell a product and make more money for the local economy. But what makes what our work is about so special is that it goes beyond that. We are looking at really making a difference for our communities. We're looking at people working. We're looking at people developing their own jobs or growing their jobs. And we are looking at people developing a sense of pride, sharing their culture with others, and hopefully that experience expands their understanding and they become more interested in creating these quality, meaningful relationships with others. This is something tourism professionals just don't consider. And we have to keep in mind that these are benefits that are outcomes of what we're talking about. As you begin to plan, I want to share some things with you. There's been a maturing of the ethnic tourism market in the last 20 years. In the early 90s, I had the opportunity to travel to many destinations across the country. In particular, I'm reminded of trips in Los Angeles, Brooklyn, New York, Denver, Colorado, and Little Rock, Arkansas. These are destinations that had some wonderful, if not fully developed, tourism assets that promoted ethnic, cultural, and heritage things. Historic civil rights locations, shops boasting wonderful visual artists, museums highlighting lesser-known aspects of history for certain ethnic groups. So civil rights locations. If you go to Little Rock, one of their main things that they're looking at is what happened when those young black children desegregated that school district by going to the high school. I think it was Central High. That's now a tourism attraction. So out of something that was very, very trying and challenging for this nation, and particularly for that city, it is now something that they promote to visitors. If you look at museums, Denver has a black cowboy museum. Small, out of the way, but it's there. And it's a good experience to go, but it's not on the tourism path of the city. So you have to know where you're going to get there. I call that unevenness or gap in tourism product, and I think it's important to note that. Great cultural heritage sites in a place that had no regular public days and hours of operation, wonderful restaurants and eateries that did not take credit cards, or their staff was surly, historic theaters promoting authentic performances, but they were hard to find. They didn't offer parking, or they were located in neighborhoods that didn't accommodate motor coaches, or just, the neighborhood was still in transition. Cultural centers that provided no visitor amenities. You loved being there, but they didn't have a bathroom you could use. I'm pointing this out because in many ways these great places were not visitor ready. And you do have to be visitor ready. I remember meeting with owners of small businesses angry because they decided to open a business or expand a business, believing that once the business was built, tourists would flood in. I built it, how come they didn't come? They lost money. I met chamber officials, CVB officials, who expressed frustration because while they loved the idea of having a new thing to promote, which is what they're in the business of doing, they were either overselling the new product or the product was ill-equipped for what they were trying to do with the volume of visitors that they could send to that particular place. Nearly 20 years later, there have been great strides made. I'm not saying this doesn't still happen, but we're certainly much more aware of these things. And there is this idea of having the capacity to enter into the visitor market that we need to always be aware of. More resources are available to train and educate about tourism and hospitality. 20 years ago, I think there were 3 schools in the country that did tourism and hospitality degrees. Now, in almost every state, you will find a program in hospitality management, in tourism management or development. You even have at least 20 or 30 programs out here now who have that at the master's level. So we went from few resources to many resources that can help educate our population. More official marketing and promotion agencies have added staff members who are from or are familiar with the communities being engaged to include new tourism offerings. If that's not the case here, it needs to change. If you're going to start working with these communities, you need people that reflect who you're going to be working with. It is very important. If it's not being done at the CVB, you need to look at that. If it's not being done at the chamber level, you need to look at that. However you're looking at developing this product, folks really do need to reflect the people that you want to work with.